Pleased to be joined by the chair of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, Gary Barta, who is also the athletic director at Iowa. Gary, the story in the sport the last few days has been the situation at Ohio State. How would you describe the committee's position on number of games played relative to where they're going to be ranked?
Well, as everybody knows, we did not have an additional game to evaluate this week, so the last game we watched was a good win over Indiana. A lot of discussion about the number of games that a team plays, and it's not anybody's fault, but trying to evaluate a team that has 4 games in versus a team that has 7, 8, or 9 games in is definitely a problem, and it's created by the pandemic. But so the more games a team brings to the committee, the more we have to evaluate.
So what was that discussion like? How would you describe what the discussions were? Because you already have teams in your top 4 that have twice as many wins as Ohio State has played games.
It was talked about a lot, and is specifically talked about in the room about whether or not Ohio State goes to 4, or if Texas A&M flips and goes to 4 and Ohio State goes to 5. A lot of discussion about that. At the end of the day, the offensive firepower of Ohio State, all the weapons they have, the win over Indiana. And then we did have an additional game to evaluate in Texas A&M. They beat LSU 20-7. But at the end of the day, the committee just decided that Ohio State was still a better team than Texas A&M, deserved to be 4. But definitely a lot of discussion about number of games played.
Gary, when we've talked, and you've mentioned it a couple of times here in terms of watching games played and how important the football judgment is, and one thing that has struck us here is how that affects where BYU sits. They're up 1 spot from last week, but I'm not going to be disingenuous. I think they should be ranked higher, and most of the guys here do as well. What is it that's holding BYU in the position that it's in behind some teams that have lost a couple of games?
I said last week, great respect for BYU, but what is it that holds it back if you compare BYU's, the games they've played, the teams against whom they've competed, and you compare those to some other teams, it's really the strength of schedule or the games that they're playing and not being as strong as some of the other teams that we're ranking ahead of them.
It's a difficult task for sure with BYU. They have one more opportunity to impress the committee. Gary, we appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks much, guys.
All right, there's Gary Barta. He will be with us every Tuesday night, the next 2 regular season rankings, and then the final rankings coming on December 20th.